see and hear. We are the people behind the curtain. We are the invisible ones. Prepare for a glimpse into a world many are unaware of and few have seen. Your journey begins now.
Hello, and welcome to the Invisible Ones podcast, the podcast that peels back the curtain of the live events industry, allowing you to look under the hood and see the engine that drives this multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. On today's episode, Angel and I are going to dive into how we learn. This episode probably geared a little bit more toward the invisible ones, in our audience, the technicians, the stagehands, production staff, and those that work behind the scenes on live corporate events. Last time, we went through much of the new normal our industry is entering. So this time, we want to explore ways that folks can learn new skills, or how to repurpose current skills, or even which, past skills could be dragged out of the closet or attic they've been stored away in for the past several years to get a gig. Any gig. Because, the electric bill still needs to be paid. The kids probably want to eat, and the car probably needs some gas, especially if you get that gig. But we'll get to all that in a moment. But first, let me tell you about one of our sponsors, King Productions. Everyone has a story to tell, but every company has a story to tell too. King Productions specializes in conveying your company's story to your audience within the live corporate events marketplace. They've helped some of the biggest brands in the world tell their stories, mainly by coalescing all the elements into a cohesive and focused mix as your show director, but also through lighting design, overall technical direction, video and audio editing, copywriting, graphic design, or consulting with your current creative team, whether it's for an audience of a few hundred or a few 100,000. And they've been doing it for nearly 40 years. King Productions has worked in every area of the vast communication field, from theater and rock and roll to TV and film. They have the depth and breadth of knowledge and experience to draw from to help you choose the best way to communicate your company's unique story to your company's unique audience. Visit them at www.ckingproductions.com and get them on board to help you get your story out there. Angel?
Are we going to go into the
How do we learn?
How do we learn?
I figured we'd, so pause.
On any other show, they'd cut this next part out and only show you the good stuff. But since The Invisible Ones is all about looking behind the curtain at what it takes to make a production happen, we're going to show you why it's important to rehearse what and how you're going to deliver your message to your audience, whether you're doing it live or even pre-recording it. So let's see what happens when Tomm and Angel try to do it without rehearsing first.
Rolling again in 3, 2. So, Angel.
Hey, Tom.
How do we learn?
Well, different people learn different ways, as we all know that, because we're all beautiful and, what do we call it? We're all different snowflakes, and we all melt differently.
I thought you were going to unicorns, but okay, fine. We'll go with snowflakes.
We were always told the whole, no snowflake. And I don't mean that in the triggered snowflake. No, I can't say that. Wait, go back. All right, let's go back.
And cut.
All right, let me not use snowflakes. So that's
back to the top. You can't use rainbows.
No rainbows?
You can't use, I don't know what you can use.
We are all like grains of sand in the ocean.
Through the hourglass?
Yes, right.
So are the days of our lives.
Well, thank God that most of the, thank goodness that most of our audience won't remember that, because hopefully.
And frankly, thank God that, most of the days of our lives are almost over.
Almost over, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
We're wrapping again in 3, 2. So, Angel.
Tom.
How do we learn?
Well, Tom, I think different people. Oh, God, I had it, and you told me the days of our lives, and now I have that freaking thing in my head. You clouded it in there. It's like you threw a drop of dye into the water.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, it's like you poured a scoop of strawberry quick in the milk, and it just all turned pink.
How do we learn? Through repetition. Repetition and repetition. Or we just keep screwing up and going back and trying again.
Right. I'm going to tell you the way I think.
We learn? We learn through experience.
That's right, through experience.
We make mistakes And then we try to correct them.
Like
and
Mr.
by doing
Miyagi to the
so,
Karate Kid.
we learned. Yes, that is
like
correct.
Like Mr. Miyagi to the Karate Kid. He makes us sand his floors, paint his fence, and I guess wipe his glass down.
And basically do his housework. Yes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. If you could do a remodel on my house,
let me think about this before,
so
we
I
don't
teach
keep
you karate.
How do we learn? Well, the way we were talking about that we learn.
Well, there's a difference between, so maybe rather than how do we learn, maybe it's a matter of, so in the industry.
Continuing education.
So within our industry, there always seems to be those techs, those people that appear to be just like a little ahead of the curve. They always seem to know what the newest thing that's coming out. They've already maybe even, learned a little bit about it, and they always seem to stay ahead of the curve of what's coming, what's going on, and how things are changing. Because our industry, frankly, yes, a lot is the same, but things are always changing, especially and faster these days as technology advances, as approaches to doing what we do change.
Yeah.
Then and as we get with new clients or they're trying to try something innovative, et cetera. But there always seems to be that core, some core group of folks that we all know them, that are always like just a little ahead of the curve, just a little bit ahead of the 8 ball on that instead of being behind it. And then there's a group that seems to be a little bit more like, I don't know, the world's passing me by, and
right. I can't believe I have to learn this.
I'm doing my thing, and I can't believe you guys are going to make me. Why don't we just do it the way we've always done it?
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to put on my, Northeast New England style union guy accent when I say that.
Right.
But, I think, our union brothers and sisters out there, they know who they are. And there are some of them that are, can be a little bit of a pain and can, do things. But I will also say that the best and worst crews I have ever worked with all over the world are all union.
Right.
I would also say some of the best and some of the worst crews I've worked with are also non-union. So it really is down to the people. It's not.
It really is.
And some unions do have reputations.
Sure. And there are, some locals that, and I think it's quite a few of them because I've talked to Local 1 and Local 16 about, color calibration training and stuff like that. And they always, those are the ones that I have the most knowledge of and most working experience with. And those guys always want to, those guys and gals always want to keep ahead of the curve. Like what we're talking about right now, they want to know how to color a wall. They want to know how to hook up, this and that the best way, the most efficient way possible. So there are a lot of locals out there that have a training manager that are looking to reach out and spend some dollars, some of those dollars that the union dues, put into the coffers, and they want to get their teams up and want to do the best job possible. And yes, just like anything else, you can have the best and the worst. To me, some of the unskilled labor I've run into during touring or during doing live shows in the middle of the country or somewhere like that, where they might not have a union, have also been the worst shows. And then you go to say like a Local 16 or Local 1, and you just know that those people are going to know what they got. Oh, I know I need to. Don't worry about it. What do I even know that? Or a guy who does rigging or something like that. Obviously, 16 doesn't do rigging, and 1 doesn't do rigging, but when it comes to
Local 1 does.
Local 1 does.
If you go through C Factor,
and
a couple other companies.
That's right. Because when we did the Samsung thing,
Local 1 does rigging,
right?
But 16 does rigging too in Moscone.
That's right.
Which Mike, one of the stewards there, he just retired this past year. I'm trying to remember his last name.
Gotcha.
Great guy, awesome. And I would say that holds true in terms of, like we said, it's best and worst. And it comes down to the people, and it comes down to the desire. And I've also, when I've worked with non-union guys who have not worked with a lot of unions, I did a show at McCormick Place a couple of years ago, and one of my associate TDs on the show, I was the TD over several different vendors, and one of their TDs did not have a lot of experience with unions. And in McCormick Place, it was actually IBEW, and I cannot remember the local name. Plus, it was also Projectionist Local 110 there. We did not have Local 2. But he was having these issues, and he's like, man, these guys that won't do this, and they're just taking forever, and they're ticking me. And I said, And if you keep treating them and talking to them the way that you are, trust me, they have a slower gear.
Yeah.
If you want the union to do a good job, this is their house.
Right.
They work here all the time in this building. And there are certain buildings around the country, Moscone in San Francisco, Javits in New York, McCormick in Chicago, Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, Dallas Convention Center, so that's some of the big Vegas Convention Center, Sands, et cetera, where these guys, they're doing 1 to 2 shows every week in the same, maybe it's not the same show, but in the same venue.
Yeah.
They know that venue. They've worked there a while. They know what they're doing. But it's their house. It's where they go to work there every day. Just because we travel around and we're always in different places doesn't mean, it's a different lifestyle. But just like anything else, you would not go to somebody's house. A friend of yours invites you over to one of their friends' houses, and you walk in and, they're cooking. And the first thing you do is, man, what's that smell? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Is that, what are you doing?
You took that out of my head. I was going to say, you don't walk into somebody's house and just open up the refrigerator and start digging through there. Hey, you got any Coke? You got any Cokes here? You got any bottled waters? And you go, what are you doing? You got gas permission. It's like, I get it.
Or then, opening up the fridge, for instance, like, oh, you guys don't have any, you don't have any beer?
Yeah.
Or you don't have any bottled water? I thought I wanted, I thought I'd have some Fiji.
Right.
You don't do that when you go into somebody's house as a guest.
Right.
And what I've also found is when you go into some of those places where, the crews are there all the time, you respect the guys, you respect the house. Mm-hmm. They will bend over backwards to make your show happen. They will do whatever it takes to make your show happen. Mm-hmm. You go in and you disrespect them. You act like you are run the place, and it's you act like a prima donna. Mm-hmm.
They're going to cut you down to size pretty quickly.
They're going to let you know that you're a guest in their house, and straighten up and fly right.
And if you notice that a lot of the people that have bad experiences are the ones that come in like that. They're like, well, we're just going to do what we're going to do. It's like, well, why don't you go and find out rules first? Go get acquainted with the folks, and these, like I said, they're skilled labor. They're there to help you out.
They are, exactly. They are there. Just like we're there as a traveling crew. We're there to put in the show and make our client look good. Yep. Well, the local crew is there to make you look good and to do, to help you do your job.
Exactly.
And I would also say too, and if you treat them correctly, and I would say this is true union and non-union houses specifically, where maybe it's a non-union house, but those guys, again, that crew, they work in that house all the time. It's their home. You're a guest. But I have found, even in places that are considered tough union towns, when you treat them with respect, when you respect their house, you respect the work that they're doing, and you follow the rules.
Yep.
That over the course of that of time during that load in and show and et cetera, the rules actually get a little relaxed.
Sure. And
they kind of let a few things slide here and there just because you've treated them right, and now they also, through that process, have learned that, you're not some, they don't know you, but they realize, hey, you know what? You're not some wet behind the ears kid who doesn't know what he's doing, who's going to screw up something or whatever. You actually know what you're doing. So you know what? You trusted us. You've respected us. We're actually starting to trust you. You know what? Yeah, you can go do that thing. That's fine.
Right. Well, and then they also have that trust and confidence that you are following their best interest. You are, sending their guys to breaks when they need to. You are, making sure that their guys are safe. All these other things. So it's a symbiotic relationship when you realize how to do how to operate with a person, which would be the same thing if you went anywhere else. It's like you're just not going to walk in somewhere and go into a theater and just walk through security without checking in or something like that. It's almost the same thing. You're just, you're basically, paying respect to that particular organization or that particular building. And so, that builds on how do we learn, in my opinion. You learn the hard way if you don't do things right, though.
That's right. But, and I would add one additional thought to that of the, respecting the house, respecting the people, et cetera. I would say this is probably true more of union crews, especially those that are working in the same venue all the time.
Sure.
You come back, they remember you.
Yes.
If you treated them right or you treated them wrong, they remember you.
Yeah.
And so you get a reputation based on your first experience with them, and they treat you accordingly moving forward.
Sure.
However, there's also, like this guy in Chicago I dealt with, he changed his attitude. He changed his approach. And what do you know, halfway through that second day, his crews started working faster, started working harder, and started being a lot more agreeable because he changed his attitude and how he approached them. But I think that within that, which getting back to what we're supposed to be talking about, is the how we learn thing, that even, within the union crews or the non-union crews, and unions have that training budget, like you mentioned, they actually do have systems in place where people can go learn how to get better. Non-union guys, there's stuff, you can find things, and there's groups in different cities where it's not necessarily an official thing, but it's like, they get together and they talk about stuff, or they check in with people, or even just, a text message about, hey guys, I ran into this. There are people that you email or text out, whether it's a group or individuals, where you're like, hey, I saw this thing. But I think within all those groups, you have the two types of people. Those that are, oh, hey, they're teaching this thing. I want to learn how to do that. I want to figure that out. I'm going to go there. And the other ones will go, why? Why do I got to learn that?
Right.
And the thing that clued it in for me was many, many years ago in Hollywood, when I was still doing some rock and roll stuff, and I got a buddy of mine who was an actor to just make a little extra money on the side. I got him locked in with LA Stage Call that does, stagehands for, they weren't doing as much corporate then, but they did mostly rock and roll. And he would go out and he was basically just a box pusher, you know? And I started talking to him, I was like, hey man, if you want to go further in this, I can teach you some other aspects of business. No, I just want to push the fuzzies, I just want to push fuzzies. And I go, well, here's the deal. I said, when you're on a show and you're in load in and you look around, you ever see there's a few people here, one or two that aren't pushing boxes, and everybody's going up and talking to them. They seem to be like the people in charge. And yeah. So I said, yeah, they all get paid a lot more because of their skill set.
Exactly.
The more you know, the more you get paid in this business. This business is truly, it rewards hard work and aptitude and skills.
Yeah. And like you're saying, the other part of that is you can tell, and a lot of people get off of Facebook because, whatever, they don't want to put their life on out there on the web, and they just don't want it to politics. Honestly, one of the big things that I keep Facebook around for is because there's so many great groups out there, like the Barco group, or the Riedel group, or the, and there's a lot of things that get discussed there. It's even become a form of tech support where, sometimes on weekends, somebody won't answer your tech support call. You throw it out to the group on Facebook, and somebody might come up, hey, it's a firmware issue or something like that. So, the ways we learn, that's a really good way to learn there. It's things are picking up. If you're new to something, you want to learn something, start reading. Also there's a lot of Slack groups out there. Like Disguise has a great Slack group, that you learn on, ask questions. And then the training libraries have become really, really good, really in depth. Let's see, Riedel's got a really good, in-depth training. Recently on LinkedIn as well. Let's not forget LinkedIn. And I believe he used to be with Alfred Dietzler. I think Matthew Dietzler used to. He's doing like a Riedel Tuesdays or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen his posts on LinkedIn.
Yeah. But that's how you start keeping ahead of the trend. It's also going to trade shows, back when we used to go to trade shows, just kidding. I mean, we will go, a lot of us always say, go into an NAB or an LDI, you might not see something new. It might be like, oh yeah, the same light from last year came out and they have whatever, or, that new video encoder, a new camera came out. But it's really new. It's not new yet. It's not that it's not new. It's like, yeah, okay. It's just another rendition of something that was there. It's not like mind blowing technology, but that's not what you're going to that show for. You're going to that show to to learn from your friends, relationships. That's one thing that we really miss about doing these shows as well. Not just on the other side of the curtain in the front, but all those invisible ones. Always when we're in town, how often do you go? And you learn, and I'm getting to this, the way you learn with this is because you get to hang out with friends and, over sushi or over beer or something like that, you discuss, hey man, what's the new thing you're doing? He's like, oh dude, I just picked up this one thing that's, and to me, that's another thing that's missing in that in that COVID-19 right now, this vacuum that we have of information that's, you can still do a Zoom meeting, but there's nothing like sitting down in a bar with a guy, talking face to face and going, hey man, and during this show, we did this and this and this. And, we added this piece of gear. And then that's how you start learning. That's the organic part of learning. You can do book learning, you can do structured learning, but there's a lot of times when you hook up with friends. And then the other thing is you trust a friend. You trust a friend that's done something because they have their your best interest at hand, or they're going to tell you what happened because maybe they're showing off a little bit, and that's cool. That's cool too.
Oh, absolutely.
But to me, ways we learn. How do guys that like us that are in the forefront, or like say we could mention 10 other guys that are in this. How do they learn? They're always out there hitting the new thing, doing the new thing. They're the ones installing betas on their machines and crashing machines. Yes, right. Obviously not during shows.
No,
right?
no.
But
not during shows.
We just mentioned about 6 or 7 different ways that we learn there. But the main part of it, and like I was discussing with you earlier, was that the other way we learn is like if you're a lighting guy and we're talking about tracking cues, right? As opposed to you were talking about a cue that writes the entire stack. I'm not a lighting guy, so I don't know, but I know the way that a cue gets written, right? And a lighting cue, you let's say when you first start in this business, you're writing down everything, and it becomes kind of fundamental to you as to what it is. Almost like the way some people go from Mac to PC. You go, hey, you know what's the same thing about this? You have folder structure, you have a main menu, you have icons, you can right click, all these other things, right? Well, to me, it's the same way you start learning from system to system. When you go to a video system, you always have your main bus, you have your downstream keys. When you go to lighting, you're going to have universes, whatever it is, and that thing. Yeah. Audio, you have matrix, and you start building upon those things. And you don't have to download every single thing about that new thing, that new device every time. You're tracking what happened. Hey, what's different from this console than that console?
Right. And I'm adding to what I already know.
Exactly. It's just an addition to
relearning everything from the ground up each time.
Unless it's a completely different technology that you never heard of. Oftentimes when I teach color, since I used to be in audio a long time ago, I always equate color with EQs. Like what's a 3D, what's a 1D and a 3D LUT? What is the difference between a fixed band EQ and a parametric EQ,
right?
Because you're kind of doing the same things. You have different, the one's more in depth. So again, we're tracking concepts that we did before, and a lot of people know audio more than they think they know audio, and that transfers directly into color in the video right away. So immediately when I say that, a lot of people in classes' eyes light up and go, "I get it now,"
right.
Instead of these concepts. But anyway, that's just kind of a subset of, in my opinion, how I learn. And I know how friends in the industry learn and how we talked about things and how things go about.
But I think that last point that you brought up is really cool. And that's something that I think many, because I don't think many people I don't think they consciously think about what could I learn from another department that applies logically or pathway approach-wise to my specialty.
I love cross-learning. I love cross-learning.
And as I was going to say, when you were talking about, when you get around, you talk to your friends, et cetera, and like at an LDI or at an NAB, but also on, sometimes we do those shows where you've got 5, 6, 7, 10, a dozen rooms running that all need an LD,
right?
An A1, an audio guy, audio engineer, A2, video engineer, video switcher, projectionist, et cetera. And of course, on those shows, once the day is done, everybody goes and meets, whether it's in the lobby or in the bar or the restaurant, we go out to dinner, whatever. But you always see that everybody kind of peels off into their departmental groups.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of cross pollination in that. But at the same time, and having been, formerly more of a lighting designer, I know that when we're on those shows and we would sit down and it was like, more often than not, I'm the LD on my show. There isn't another one.
Sure.
Unless you're on a show where there are several rooms that everybody's, for the same client and the same production company is putting these people in. And we love those conversations because we sit around and we talk about,
right.
Or you walk into somebody else's room because you had you needed something and you see them do something. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. Hang on. What was that? That was kind of cool. What did you do there? And then, right. And then those conversations start. And I think that those are things that I have seen where people tend to, every time that happens, everybody's like, we never get to do this.
Sure.
We never just get to sit around a bunch of lighting folks or a bunch of video folks, a bunch of audio guys, and just talk about
what you're seeing out there, what new thing you're doing, et cetera. But I think you bring up a good point there at the end, though, is that there's not always a lot of cross-pollination from department to department. I think you and I are in some ways unique because we do several different or do jobs that cross over into other departments. I mean, I started in the business in audio when I was 20 something.
Yeah, same here.
I mean, well, officially I started in the business as a camera op, but but when I got out of college and I first started working in the business, I worked for an audio company. I was doing backline and small PA. And then I got laid off and I ended up doing rock and roll. And then I ended up going into lighting. You know, and because it just seemed kind of interesting. But I also worked as a carpenter on a couple shows. My very first corporate show was I was on the carp crew, building more turntables for cars than I ever want to do again in my life. But, it was a different skill set there. I was doing theater as well. And then, as my career has progressed and I moved up to lighting designer and then into more technical director, where you do have to deal with all the departments. And then the same with show directing, stage managing, show calling, whichever term we're using this year. You do have to understand a little bit, or I believe you need to understand at least a little bit about
everybody.
Some of the things that your techs are doing. You don't need to know I don't know how to run an E2, but I understand part of the logic of it. And I understand some of the process of it to get the results I want on the screen.
Right.
Same with audio. I know a little bit more about audio. And then with lighting, because I was a lighting designer, I always kind of, I have to check myself. And there are times I've been on shows with an LD that I haven't worked with before, and I'll see some stuff and I go, okay, am I being critical because he isn't that good or because I'm just being overly critical? And it's not what I would do or how I would do it. And before I ever, go to a tech and say, hey, what are you doing? You can't do that way, unless I see him do something absolutely stupid. But, but I with the lighting, I think I'm much more reticent to step in and say, no, we need to,
right.
Unless I see them just, and I have mostly in other countries, pushed people off of the Grand MA and sat down and just give me 3 minutes and we'll be done and we can move on.
Right.
But I think, understanding how those other departments do things and realizing where the systems or the processes might be the same, even though your goal is a different specialty or what have you.
Yeah.
And just always looking, and I think that why those people seem to be ahead of the curve is because they're curious.
Right.
They're they always want to know something. They're curious. They want to know more about something that they saw that just was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I mean,
right.
Even some of the shows you and I worked on where, I'm the show caller, I'm the show director, you're the, E2 op and the video engineer, and you're probably running around. You're always running around doing something else and helping somebody do their thing because, because you're a genius.
Thanks, man.
And figuring things out. But even with that, it's like, I'll go back and I'm like, oh, you can do that. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Right.
I can use that in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to try something. We're going to do this thing. Yeah, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, okay, we tried.
Right,
maybe we learned. But watching how you work and seeing some of the stuff that you do, because you're always trying new things and always on the cutting edge of some things, it allows me as a show director to go, I could, and it may not even be on that show, but it's like, that's cool. Can you when we get a chance, show me a little bit more about what you got going on there? Because I've got a show coming up. I think that whatever you did, could work really well.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to add is, as I don't know, I consider what would you consider ourselves in the whole realm as an age? Obviously, we're not the oldest in the business by far, but we're also not the youngest in the business by far. And I know that different generations, are learning different. And the point I'm making here is a few days ago, we did a show at one of the local schools because they're starting to do their events as hybrid, not hybrid events, but they're doing remote learning.
Right.
Yeah. And
that's what my son is currently doing.
Sure. And so the thing that was obvious to me is, we had a robotic camera that we were using. And, we've always said that the younger generation has been kind of raised on, either iPads or devices that have that have controllers on them, that are Xbox, PlayStation, whichever. And there was they stuck me with an audio guy, right? And immediately I was like, and he's a younger audio guy, he's in his 20s, fine. And I go, hey, have you ever run, a camera? And at first he was apprehensive. He's like, I don't know, man. He's like, I'm gonna mess up on this. And I go, hold on a second, because this is a robotic camera. I said, you ever done anything with Flight Simulator with a joystick, or have you ever done, a PlayStation game or anything? He goes, yeah. So I approached it that way to him, and I started showing him. I'm like, well, look, check this out. This is just a joystick here, side by side. This is your zoom and focus. This would be like if you're, going up and down in an airplane or something like that. And man, he had it down. Writing presets. Focusing in. We were even doing. I showed him what the iris did. Up and down, color calibration, all this other things. But the whole point of that was, it's just focusing and showing somebody how to learn. How they learn, and then basically presenting the information to them in that means. Some people are tactile learners. Some people have to read about it first and then do it. Some people are the ones that beat their, like me. I always say I like to beat my head against it. In other words, I'm gonna go on this thing and I'm gonna mess up as many times as I can, and then it's gonna teach me the lesson of why you learned that, because you did it wrong the first time,
or the first 78
times, and you had such a bad. But then I come back to it and it ties things, and when it ties things in at 3 a.m, I'll wake up, I'm looking at the ceiling, going, "That's how that works," or anything like that. But we all learn differently. But the whole thing is all these, the younger generation coming in. First of all, let's not discount them, which is one thing that really bothers me when. We usually say millennials or whatever, these lazy kids. And that's not true, man. There's a lot of really hardworking kids out there.
Well, and that's actually, that is actually an upcoming podcast episode we are going to do, which is going to be called Why We Shouldn't Ghost Gen Z.
Right.
Because both of my kids are Gen Z, so I do know a little bit of the slang. They, of course, hate it when I use it because, it's some old guy saying ghost. And I asked my daughter at one point, I said, so are you angry because I'm using your slang, or are you angry because I'm using it correctly?
Anyway,
she wouldn't answer the question.
Right, she wouldn't answer the question.
And my daughter is actually going into the industry. She's in college right now studying stage management.
And I guess this is a good time to pitch one of our sponsors.
Oh, yes.
Singular Live. And the reason I want to pitch that is because I want to let you guys know guys and gals know how easy it is to run Singular. And the reason we know how easy it is to run is because we just did Alfred Media, which is one of our sponsors as well, just did a kind of gratuitous show for there's a lot of classes this year that haven't been able to graduate in the normal sense, right? So we've had to do a lot of remote events, and Alfred Media was gracious enough to have School of Rock, which is a musical learning school. It's a third party. It's an entity, but we did.
And no, Jack Black is not one of their
teachers.
No,
Jack Black. This is not Jack Black. I mean, School of Rock only in name,
right?
But the School of Rock. One of our fellow colleagues, their son is a bass player, and so they were doing their
drummer
and a guitarist,
yeah.
And they were doing their seasonal show. And so what we did is, as a company, we said, look, these kids have been working so hard all year long, and what we want to do is we want to hit them with all the stops that we would do in an actual production. And we gave them cameras, and we gave them, lower thirds, i.e. live overlays with Singular. So Singular is so easy that I designed a lot of the stuff, made Singular overlays. I mean, active overlays, like we did kind of a jukebox thing, like what MTV used to do, where if Pat Benatar's song is coming up, you see the song, you see the album, the year, everything else, and it was all data-driven.
It was also like you guys put in like little trivia bits about the songs.
Yeah, we had crawlers with, and guess what? All that was being run by my son, who's 11 years old.
Wow.
So that's how easy Singular is to operate, and that's why I wanted to bring that in. And there's actually, on the Singular Live site, there's an actual article about my son running the Singular Live. I designed it. Of course, he didn't design all this stuff.
Right.
I designed it, but it was so easy that he was actually copying and pasting text from all these factoids that everybody just kept reading. And they're like, hey, where'd the factoids go? I didn't know that Tom Petty's song did I didn't know that Aerosmith used a sugar packet when they were, for the maracas, because they didn't have maracas in the studio. I mean, things like that. It was pretty cool stuff. Singular Live allowed us to do these lower thirds and do timers and do, data-driven titling and all these other things that right now people do with PowerPoint or, keynote and it's just kind of drab where,
Right,
all the animations and everything. Single Alive comes from a pedigree of, these $70,000 systems that do Chiron and all these other, VizRT that do Super Bowls. You can have that in the power of your hand now. In your own Zoom meeting, you can actually through using OBS, you can you can font yourself, lower third yourself with Single Alive. So if you have more questions about Single Alive, please give us a call at Red Rock Ops at redrockops.com. That's REDROCKOPS.com. Contact us through there, Angel at redrockops.com, and let us know how Singular can help you do your next event.
And to date myself, basically what you're saying is Singular is doing the opposite of what Tom Lehrer talked about in his song called New Math, that is so easy, only a child can do it.
Right.
With Singular, it's so easy, even a child can do it.
Exactly.
Okay, good. And mad props to Tom Lehrer, wherever you are these days.
Exactly.
Which you brought up though about, and like I said, we're in a upcoming podcast, probably a little further down the line, we are going to be talking about the upcoming generation, Gen Z. Millennials at this point are kind of already, in their late 20s, early 30s, et cetera. And so if they're in the industry, they've been here a while but the new generation is coming up, Gen Z, and you talking about, how they approach things and the world they've grown up. So for instance, my daughter, who's my oldest, her class, which just graduated in 2019, was the last high school class that graduated before 9/11, that was born before 9/11.
9/11, right. That's right.
She was born in August of 2001.
That's crazy.
And a month later, the towers came down. Yep. And so that was kind of a seminal moment, in the history of our country. And this generation that's coming up now, it's like that generation that was, everyone after that was born after 9/11.
Sure.
And the technology and the, some of the things that we deal with on a regular basis and how that's affected our lives because of 9/11, but also just in the way that tech has grown, et cetera, and the screen time and the iPads and the iPhone, because at the time, so when my kids were born, the iPhone hadn't come out yet. There was no such thing as a smartphone unless
2007,
unless you talk about, the
the BlackBerries.
BlackBerries were out at that point, but the iPhone changed the game big time. And my kids, when the iPhone came out, my daughter was 6, so, and the kids that are coming up after that, it's like, so they've grown up in this world where the iPhone, the iPad, the tablet, the phablet, the Samsung, are ubiquitous.
Exactly.
And so they don't approach learning, the way I learned in this business was I just got yelled at a lot.
Sure.
By, older guys who'd been doing it forever. And that was the way you learned. You got you got your head handed to you because you didn't do that right. And then that changed. And then, but you would also see, and this is something I think that I try to do, and I also see other people doing, is when you see somebody that is showing an interest, that is showing a desire to learn and an aptitude to learn, that people are still stepping in and being mentors and taking somebody under their wing and going, oh, all right, you're interested? Cool. Let me show you. You want to learn how to do that. And I think that there's a cool thing about how the younger generation that comes in, the way that they learn, the way they approach learning is different than maybe how we did it.
Yeah.
But I would also say that what we can bring to the table is the understanding of a foundational knowledge, because the technology that we have is amazing.
It is.
But what do you do when it breaks?
Right. How
do you put on a show when the really whiz-bang cool computer thing just crashed?
Right.
And I remember doing a show years ago, and I think I had an ETC console. Hog 3 had been out for a while. Grand MA 2, I think, had just been launched. But I had this ETC console, and I had a bunch of LED lights. And I went in and I wrote this whole chase for the walk-in with this, cool rainbow thing going from front to back and back, outside to in and back and forth. And one of the other lighting techs came up after and was like, how did you do that? How did you write that cue without having an effects engine? And I wrote it all through subroutines and cue lists on the ETC. And I said, because that's the way we used to have to do it before
the effects engines came out.
Yeah.
And, but I also noticed that he was like, wait, you can do that with that console?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can. You can do this. You can do this. Because there's times where that effects engine in the lighting console world doesn't always give you exactly what you're looking for. And sometimes going back to the way we used to do it gives you the result you need. And I think that's true in all departments. There are still guys I know that use analog plugins and analog equipment for audio.
Sure.
Because A, they know it really well, but B, to them, it just sounds better.
Right.
Well, and it gives them the result they want.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to say one technology that really it's great technology. I want to say this, but it's had trouble catching up because of the range of ages that we deal with in our shows, right? And and backstage, you have some very senior people that have been around for, decades and decades. And some people are trying to,
What is this new technology Angel's referring to? Could it revolutionize our industry? Well, we'll find out next week when The Invisible Ones continues. Until then, please subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when new episodes are posted, and of course, share. Share with your network. Tell your coworkers, tell your family, tell your friends all about The Invisible Ones. Thanks, gang. Invisible Ones disappearing back behind the curtain till next time in 3, 2, 1.